The Orpheon hung in the void like a cathedral made of glass and metal, its translucent corridors glimmering against the weak light of the red dwarf below. Inside, life thrived, traders haggling in 20 languages, diplomats arguing over atmospheric percentages, children of species that had never shared a planet chasing each other through low-grav plazas. To most, Orpheon was proof that the galaxy could live in peace. To Captain Elias Ward, it was a powder keg waiting for the right spark. He leaned against the viewport outside Dock 9, watching a convoy of Treknah war barges slide past. Their hulls were matte crimson, marked with jagged sigils that shimmered like dried blood. They flew formation with the precision of blades. Elias's jaw tightened. The Treknah didn't understand diplomacy. They understood dominance. A soft voice broke through his thoughts. Still judging people by their ships? He turned. Dr. Asha Rana stood there, hands clasped behind her back, her white diplomatic coat bright against the dark corridor. She smiled, a small, wry curve of lips that always disarmed him. "Ships tell you everything," he said. "How a species thinks, how they fight, or how they hide their fear," she countered, stepping beside him to gaze at the same stars. Her reflection flickered across the viewport, framed by nebular light. "You see weapons. I see art. Maybe both are true." He gave a quiet laugh. "You and your optimism. That's why you keep me around," she said, then softened. "And because no one else can stand your cooking." Their banter hit something deeper, a rhythm of shared survival. 2 years together since Earth assigned them to the Consortium's outer treaty missions. 2 years of near misses, close calls, and long nights staring at alien skies. Somewhere in all that, love had rooted itself quietly between them. They walked toward the Grand Hall, where the Consortium summit was about to begin. The corridor's light adjusted automatically to their species' preferences. Soft amber for humans, cool violet for the Ellerin, who glided past them on whispering legs. The air smelled faintly of ozone and fruit, a blend engineered for cross-species tolerance. Asha held her datapad close, scanning the speech she drafted for session. "The Treknah delegation will be there. Try not to glare this time. No promises." "Elias," she warned gently. He sighed. "I'll be good. Probably." The Grand Hall was alive with motion. Floating banners translated every word into 100 dialects, pulsing in colors that matched emotional tone. The Treknah occupied the eastern dais. Towering reptilian forms, scales rippling with heat. Across from them sat the Ellerin, their insectoid faces impassive, compound eyes reflecting the crowd like prisms. And at the center podium, Asha. She spoke for Earth with the confidence of someone who had memorized every treaty clause and still believed in it heart. "We stand not as conquerors," she said, her voice amplified by the hall's resonant field, "but as partners in survival. Diversity is not disorder. It is resilience." Elias watched from the side rail, proud and tense at once. The Treknah delegates hissed among themselves. One in particular, massive, scarred, scales the color of rust, rose to his feet. Varkeo the Crimson Maw, the Treknah's champion and cultural hero. "You speak of weakness," he growled, translator units rendering his voice into guttural English. "Of mercy. Yet mercy breeds prey. Is that what your species wishes to be?" Asha faced him calmly. "Mercy is strength restrained. It keeps civilizations from devouring themselves." The crowd murmured. Elias caught the flicker of the champion's tail, the subtle posture of offense. He'd seen it before, in soldiers just before a fight. Varkeo's nostrils flared. "You call conquest a disease. You insult the honor of warriors who carved empires when your world still burned in tribal wars." Asha didn't back down. "Perhaps that's why we learn faster. Because we know what it costs to mistake brutality for honor." The words hit like plasma bolts. The hall erupted in shocked noise. Elias was already moving. Varkeo surged forward, his claws igniting with blue plasma arcs. Security drones lifted off their perches, but too slow. Asha turned toward the motion. Too late. The strike came from the side, a sweep meant to intimidate, not kill, but the field flared hotter than intended. Energy raked across her chest, the light brilliant and terrible. She fell. Elias caught her before she hit the floor, the smell of scorched fabric and blood filling his lungs. For a heartbeat, he couldn't process it, her body trembling in his arms, eyes wide, lips parting without sound. "Asha, stay with me." She blinked once. Eli, then the med drone swarmed, pressing foam and nanogel, sealing, stabilizing. Voices shouted commands in a dozen languages, but all he heard was the slowing of her heartbeat. Someone grabbed his shoulder, an Ellerin guard. "Captain Ward, you must stand down." He turned, and whatever they saw in his eyes made them recoil. Across the hall, Varkeo stood motionless, breathing hard, confusion replacing pride. She insulted the honor of... Elias's voice was quiet, deadly flat. "You touched her." Security forces converged. The Ellerin magistrate declared the session terminated, invoking diplomatic immunity protocols. Varkeo was escorted out under guard, still muttering. Elias remained kneeling, Asha's blood staining his hands, until the med team lifted her onto a floating stretcher. She was alive, they said. Critical but alive. He followed them to the med bay without speaking. Hours later, the room was silent except for the hum of the cryopod. Asha lay inside, suspended in a haze of blue coolant. Her vitals flickered on the monitor. Stable, fragile. Elias stood beside her, still wearing the torn edge of his diplomatic jacket. Knuckles split from where he'd slammed the bulkhead earlier. The station's artificial dawn filtered through the viewport, indifferent to grief. He pressed a palm against the pod's glass. "You're going to make it," he whispered. "You have to." Behind him, the med chief cleared his throat. "We've done all we can." The burn went deep. Neural lattice damage. She'll need Treknar Regan tech to heal fully. Then get it. They refuse to share. They claim it was an accident. Elias turned slowly. An accident? The doctor hesitated. Their ambassador invoked ritual law. No punishment, no restitution. He left before he did something irreversible. Back in his quarters, darkness wrapped around him like armor. The room still smelled faintly of her perfume, of tea leaves and ozone. He sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the faint smear of her blood on his sleeve. The console blinked with unanswered messages. From the Human Embassy, from Consortium Security, from the Ellerin Council. All political noise. None of them saying what he needed to hear, that justice would be done. He replayed the moment again and again. The flash of blue, her gasp, the way her weight had gone limp in his arms. Each repetition stripped away another layer of restraint until only the soldier remained. He opened the weapons locker. Inside lay the matte black armor of the Earth Navy's Ghost Division. Long decommissioned but still lethal. Adaptive plates shimmered as they recognized his biosignature. He hadn't worn it since the war on Cinder 4. As the armor sealed around him, the HUD flared alive, pulsing at his heartbeat. His reflection in the visor was a stranger, expressionless, eyes like ice. The Orphean never truly slept, but in its underdecks a hum of reactors became a lullaby for criminals and ghosts. Elias Ward moved through the maintenance shafts like one of them, armor dull against the glow of power conduits. Above him, 1,000 diplomats dreamed of peace. Below, he prepared for war. He paused at a junction, hearing the distant roar of a crowd, the Trekna combat pits. The sound traveled through the metal, a heartbeat of violence that matched his own. He remembered his oath as a soldier, humanity first, no unnecessary deaths. But what the Trekna had done was not war. It was insult. It was violation. He reached the service door and keyed in an override. The lock flashed red, refused, then blinked green under his custom code. The armor recognized him as Captain Ward, Ghost Division. Clearance level Omega. He stepped into the dim corridor beyond. Here, the air was thick with heat and the tang of blood. Hollow posters advertised duels. VRRKO the Crimson MAW. Undefeated. Crowds of reptilian warriors chanted, exchanging wagers and guttural hisses. No human had ever entered this place. It was sacred ground to the Trekna. Elias walked straight toward the pit gates. Human, barked a scaled sentinel, leveling a halberd that shimmered with plasma edges. You're not authorized here. I'm not here for authorization. Elias's voice was flat, filtered through the suit's comm amp. "I'm here for Varko." Laughter rippled through the guards. The champion does not dual prey. Elias moved faster than their eyes could track. A twist, a blow, and the halberd shattered against the floor. He caught the guard's throat gently, too gently, and said, "Then tell him the prey is waiting." He let the body fall unconscious and kept walking. In the upper decks, the human embassy was chaos. Ambassador Tilda Wren pounded her fist on the comms console. "He did what?" "Left Med Security 10 minutes ago." The aide stammered. "Disabled tracking systems." "He's gone dark." Wren's face paled. "If he kills that Treknah champion, the consortium will call an act of war. Get the Ellerin Council online. Now." But the Ellerin were already broadcasting warnings across all frequencies. Contain the human before blood is spilled. No one moved fast enough. Back in the med bay, Asha ran his cryopod pulsed faintly. The attending medic glanced at her readings and frowned. Her neural activity was spiking. Inside her frozen dream, Asha saw fragments. Elias's face behind a visor, the gleam of blood, the echo of a phrase, "They hurt my mate." She tried to wake, to scream, but the pod systems kept her sedated. The machines didn't understand love, only vitals. The combat pit roared alive. Varko emerged from his chamber in ceremonial armor, plated in obsidian, claws coated with luminescent venom. The crowd cheered his name. Above them, banners shimmer with kill statistics and conquests. 300 victories, 0 defeats. Then the gate opposite opened. A single human stepped out, black armor gleaming with battle wear, helmet tucked under his arm. His face was calm, almost serene. The crowd fell silent. Elias looked up at the broadcast drones hovering overhead. The entire station would be watching soon. He wanted them to. He wanted every species to see what came of hurting what a human loved. "I am Captain Elias Ward of Earth," he said, voice amplified. "Varko the Crimson Moth struck, my mate under the flag of truce. I claim right of blood." The Treknah overseer hissed, "There is no such right among us." "There is now." The audience murmured in disbelief. It was suicide, one human against a genetically engineered warrior 3 times the size. But curiosity trumped caution. The overseer gave a slow nod. "So be it. One fight. To the death." The pitch shifted as gravity fluctuated. Platforms rose from molten channels, casting red light across metal and scale. Varko circled him, laughing. "I expected screams, little mammal. You bring silence instead." Elias sealed his helmet. "You'll get the silence you earned." The duel began with thunder. Varko struck first, claws flashing in arcs of blue plasma. Elias dodged, deflecting with gauntlets that sparked under the impact. The suit registered force levels beyond safe threshold, but he ignored the warnings. Every move he made was precise, calculated. He wasn't faster, but he was smarter. The crowd screamed for blood. Varko lunged, tail whipping, knocking Elias backward into a molten channel. The armor's cooling systems flared, holding just long enough for him to roll free, smoke trailing from the plates. "Your mate bleeds even now." Varko taunted. Something inside Elias snapped cleanly into focus. The world slowed. He remembered her smile, her voice whispering "be kind," the way she fixed his collar that morning. The images didn't calm him, they honed him. He sidestepped the next strike and drove his elbow into Varko's throat. The alien staggered, shocked at the strength. Elias pressed the advantage. 3 hits, 1 block, a sweep. The armor compensated for mass difference, servos whining. Varko countered, slamming him against a pillar. "You are strong for prey." Elias grunted, blood running inside his helmet. "And you talk too much." He triggered the suit's neural reflex mode, an experimental upgrade the Navy had banned. Adrenaline flooded his veins. Time fractured into clarity. Every heartbeat was a drumbeat of intent. He ducked under a claw, seized the alien's arm, and ripped the blade plate free. Sparks erupted. Varko roared, lunging with the other claw. Elias caught it mid-swing, twisted, and drove his own knee upward, crushing cartilage. Then he moved behind him, locking his arms around the alien's neck. The crowd howled in disbelief. "You hurt my mate," Elias said through gritted teeth. "You don't get to breathe the same air she does." He twisted. Bone and sinew gave way with a crack that echoed through the arena. Varkeo's body collapsed. His head remained in Elias's hands, blood dripping between armored fingers. For a heartbeat, there was only silence. Then chaos. The crowd screamed, some in horror, some in awe. Broadcast drones zoomed in, capturing every frame. Across the Orphean's datanet, feeds exploded with one phrase spreading in 100 languages. They hurt the human's mate. Moments later, their champion's head was in his hands. Elias dropped the head onto the scorched floor and turned away. Security forces swarmed the arena minutes later, plasma rifles raised. The human didn't resist. He walked calmly toward them, armor spattered with alien blood, expression unreadable. "Captain Ward," an Ellerin commander said cautiously, "you are under arrest for unsanctioned combat and murder." Elias deactivated his helmet, letting them see his face. He struck under truce. "I return the favor. You have endangered your entire species." He stared past the commander at the broadcast drone still hovering. "No, I reminded them who we are." The commander's mandibles clicked nervously. "You have made humanity a threat." "Good," Elias said quietly. "Maybe now they'll think twice before hurting what's ours." Hours later, the pit was sealed, but the footage had already escaped into the galaxy's networks. Across colonies and trade hubs, species replayed the moment in stunned fascination. Some called it savagery. Others called it purity. To the Trekna, it was humiliation beyond measure. To the Ellerin, a warning that emotion could eclipse reason. To the Kravex, who fed on emotional resonance, it was intoxicating. The Orphean station was silent, not the usual hum of reactors or the distant drone of commerce. This was a kind of silence that preceded a storm. Every hollow screen, every news feed, every backroom negotiation in the consortium was fixated on one recording. A human in black armor, holding the severed head of the Trekna champion. The file spread faster than containment protocols could suppress it. Some called it murder. Others called it justice. And somewhere between the two, an entire species began to tremble. The cell. Captain Elias Ward sat in a containment chamber, wrists magnetically bound to the table. The walls shimmered with containment fields strong enough to hold a battle mech. But he didn't move. His eyes were closed, his breathing steady, like a soldier in meditation. Across from him, the Ellerin adjudicator watched with cautious fascination. The insectoid's multifaceted eyes refracted the human's reflection into 1,000 tiny copies. "You understand, Captain," the adjudicator said slowly, "that what you did could ignite interstellar war." Elias didn't open his eyes. "Then maybe the galaxy needs to remember what war is." The adjudicator clicked its mandibles uneasily. "The Trekna demand your execution. The human embassy demands your release. The consortium demands your silence. That's a lot of demands." He looked up then, eyes sharp as razors. "You think I care about any of them?" "You should," said a new voice. The cell door opened with a hiss, and Ambassador Tilda Wren stepped in. Her uniform was immaculate, but her eyes were rimmed red. "You put our entire species in the crosshairs, Elias. Do you realize what you've done?" "I did what they wouldn't. This wasn't your call." Elias stood, the restraints humming warning tones. "They hurt her, on neutral ground, under the flag of peace. And your diplomacy let them walk away." Wren slammed her hand against a control pad, deactivating the restraints. "Do you think you're a hero? You're a weapon, Elias. A symbol of exactly what they fear we are." He leaned closer, voice low, "Then let them fear." The ambassador stared at him, realization dawning that there was no remorse in his tone, only clarity. "They'll call for your execution within the hour." He gave a humorless smile. "They can try." Echoes across the stars, across the galaxy. The phrase had already taken on a life of its own. They hurt the human's mate. Moments later, their champion's head was in his hands. On human colonies, it was whispered with reverence. Children repeated it as a cautionary tale of loyalty and love. On Treknah worlds, it was spoken as a curse, a wound to their pride that burned deeper than any plasma scar. In the Provoke spires, energy beings fed on emotional chaos, describing it as a symphony of vengeance. And among the Ellerin scholars, philosophers debated whether the incident proved humanity's savagery, or their terrifying purity of emotion. For the first time since their arrival on the galactic stage, humanity wasn't underestimated. They were feared. The tribunal, the consortium, convened an emergency session, the largest in 50 standard cycles. Delegates filled the amphitheater. Reptilian warlords, crystalline philosophers, vaporous entities coalesced in containment fields. At the center stood Elias Ward, guarded by drones and surrounded by shimmering energy barriers. The room buzzed with tension. An Ellerin judge opened proceedings. Captain Elias Ward of Earth, you stand accused of murder, breach of diplomatic immunity, and violation of consortium peace accords. How do you plead? Elias's voice carried across the chamber. Guilty. Gasps rippled to the delegates. The judge hesitated. And yet you show no remorse. He looked up at the gallery where the Treknah delegation sat, their scales glistening with suppressed fury. You want remorse? He said softly. Ask the one who struck my mate if he felt any. The Treknah delegate hissed, rising. You dare speak in our presence after desecrating our champion? Elias met the alien's gaze without blinking. I don't speak in your presence. I warn in it. The judge slammed at staff. Enough. Captain Ward, humanity's position in this galaxy depends on this tribunal. Do you wish to condemn your species? He paused and said, No, I'm reminding you who we are. We're not conquerors or monsters. But if you come for what's ours, what we love, you'll see both. A stunned silence fell over the hall. The judge's lights dimmed in contemplation. From a human delegation, Ambassador Wren stood. Members of the consortium, she began, voice-controlled. What Captain Ward did was wrong by your laws. But let me ask, would any of you have done less if someone you loved was struck down under truce? Would your species not demand blood? Murmurs followed. Even the Treknah couldn't deny the logic. They understood vengeance, even if they called it honor. The vote lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the verdict stunned everyone. Elias Ward was to be exiled, not executed. Humanity would retain its place in the consortium, but under watch. And the Treknah? They withdrew from diplomacy entirely, citing dishonor beyond repair. The balance of galactic powers shifted that day, and no one could pretend not to feel it. The medbay. When Elias returned to the medbay under escort, Asha was awake. Pale, weak but alive. The moment he entered. She tried to sit up, ignoring the med drone's protests. Eli. He was at her side in 2 strides, taking her hand. It was warm again, fragile but real. They said you, her voice cracked. What did you do? He hesitated. The truth was already spreading through the stars, but hearing it from him was different. He won't hurt anyone else. She closed her eyes, tears escaping. Eli, no. I couldn't let it stand. You always said violence was a last resort. He looked down at her hand, the way it trembled in his. It was, and I reached it. For a long time they said nothing. Only the hum of the med equipment filled the room. Finally, Asha whispered, They'll fear us now. Good, he said. Maybe they'll leave us in peace. But she shook her head weakly. Fear is in peace. He had no answer. The legend begins. Days later, the Orphean's traffic resumed. The blood was scrubbed from the combat pit. The tribunals archived, and the diplomats returned to their posturing. But no one forgot. The image of a human holding the severed head became a symbol, a meme, a legend, a warning. On distant colonies, miners painted it on the sides of their shuttles. Soldiers carved the phrase into armor plates. Even alien smugglers began whispering it with reluctant respect. Never cross a human's heart. They'll burn worlds for love. Elias and Asha were quietly transferred off Orphean. Their official record listed him as discharged under exceptional circumstances. But in every intelligence circle, his name was spoken with both admiration and dread. Elias's reflection. The transport shuttle drifted away from Orpheon's orbit, its engines a faint hum. Through the viewport, the station shrank to a distant glimmer. Asha slept beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. He watched the stars slip past, cold, infinite, uncaring. He thought of all the species that had judged humanity, measuring them by restraint, by logic. They never understood that emotion wasn't weakness. It was propulsion. He whispered to the stars, to himself, to whatever gods might be listening, they'll remember this. And they did. The shuttle drifted into the pale orbit of Luna's colony, its engines dimming to silence. Earth glimmered in the distance, wrapped in white clouds and ocean light. For the first time in years, Elias Ward was home, or close enough to feel it. But peace didn't follow him here. It rarely did for soldiers, and never for men who carried death in their shadow. A quiet return. The human embassy on Luna had already received him under sealed orders. There were no banners, no parades. Only silence, the kind reserved for those who'd done something terrible and magnificent at once. As the airlock cycled, Ambassador Tilda Wren was waiting. She looked tired, older than she had 3 weeks ago. When she saw him, she didn't salute. She just nodded. "They said you want quiet," she said. Elias nodded back. After Orpheon, quiet sounds good. He carried no weapon now. They'd stripped him of rank, medals, insignia, everything except his name. The man who had once represented humanity's discipline and restraint was now a ghost of both. But ghosts had long memories. Asha's garden. Luna's biodome garden stretched in long crystalline arcs, each one filled with greenery brought from Earth, a gift of memory in a sea of vacuum. It was here that Asha spent her recovery, surrounded by life she'd once helped design. When Elias found her, she was kneeling beside a pool, her reflection rippling across the surface like fractured glass. She smiled faintly when she saw him. "You look tired." He sat beside her. "You look alive. I'll take that trade." For a moment, they said nothing. Above them, the dome shimmered with passing light from a nearby shuttle. "They've been talking about you," she said finally. "Every channel, every feed. You become a story, Eli. I noticed." He gave a humorless laugh. "Half of them call me a hero. The other half call me a monster. Which one do you think you are?" He thought about that for a long time. The sound of the artificial wind filled the silence between them. "I think," he said quietly, "that I'm just human." Asha reached out, taking his hand. "Then maybe that's enough." He looked at her, really looked, and saw not the wounds or the weakness, but the strength that had drawn him to her in the first place. She'd always believed in creation, not destruction. She was the light he'd fought to protect. And maybe that's what scared the galaxy most, that humans could love something so fiercely, they'd destroy anything that tried to take it away. Echoes through the consortium. While Elias tried to fade into quiet life, the rest of the galaxy couldn't. The Trekna Empire fractured within months of the incident. Half its war clans demanded vengeance. The other half feared another human reprisal. Their internal wars burned entire moons before the consortium finally quarantined them. The Consortium Council issued new accords, emotional provocation clauses, designed explicitly to avoid what the media now called war protocols. And on human worlds, especially the colonies of the Outer Belt, Elias's name was whispered like a prayer. Soldiers painted the phrase on their armor. "Don't touch what we love." It wasn't an order. It was a promise. Some said humanity's diplomacy improved after Orpheon. Others said it became more dangerous. No one dared find out which was true. The visit. Months later, Elias was summoned. No reason, no warning, just an order marked Strategic Affairs, Tier 1 clearance. He found himself standing before a single figure in a dimly lit chamber on Luna Base. Admiral Mara Corrin, head of Human Defense Command. She studied him for a long time before speaking. "You broke a lot of laws, Captain." "Not a captain anymore." She ignored that. "You also reminded the galaxy that we're not prey. That's something they needed to remember." Elias frowned. "You're not here to congratulate me." "No," she said, pacing slowly. "I'm here to make you an offer." She slid a datapad across the table. Its contents were classified, marked in deep crimson. Special Operations Division. Off record. Off-chain. You work alone. No diplomacy, no tribunals. Just deterrence. He stared at it. You want me to be your monster. We want you to be our warning. Elias looked at her, seeing in her eyes the same cold practicality he'd once seen in the Trekna champion before the fight. The same belief that violence could hold peace together like stitches over a wound. He pushed the datapad back. No, I'm done. Corin raised an eyebrow. You think you can walk away from what you are? He stood. I don't have to walk far. The galaxy's already chasing my shadow. As he turned to leave, she said softly, Ward, history doesn't forget men like you. He paused at the door. Then maybe history needs better taste. The last transmission. Weeks later, a transmission leaked onto black channels. An image, no metadata, no origin traceable. It showed Elias Ward sitting at the edge of a crater on some nameless moon, stars burning behind him. His voice was quiet, low, and unmistakably human. If they come again, if they touch what we love, remember what happened to Champion. We didn't start this war, but we'll finish everyone you bring to our door. The transmission ended there. It spread faster than any official message ever could. Some called it propaganda. Others called it prophecy. The Trekna saw it as a threat. The humans saw it as a reminder. And the rest of the galaxy learned, once more, to tread carefully around the species from Sol. Asha's letter. Years later, long after tribunals and wars faded into rumor, Asha wrote a letter. She sent it not to Elias. She didn't know if he was alive, but to the human archives, where stories were preserved for the next generation. It read, they called him violent. They called him savage. But they never understood that what he did wasn't hate. It was love, burning in a body that refused to let go. The galaxy measures strength in fleets and weapons. Humans measure it in hearts. If you hurt one of us, we remember. If you hurt someone we love, we make sure you never forget. The letter became part of the archives under the file. HFY class incident / Orphean / the Ward effect. Centuries later, cadets at the Terran Academy would study it as a case of emotional warfare, moral paradox, and cultural evolution. But for the average colonist on dusty worlds or orbital stations, it remained something simpler. A story, a warning, a truth, legacy. Elias Ward was never seen again. Some said he joined the Frontier Rangers beyond Consortium space. Others swore he died on a derelict ship, fighting pirates who made the mistake of threatening a human convoy. But in the quiet places between stars, spacers still tell his story. They tell it around reactor fires, in bars filled with recycled air and tired faces, in the voices of people who've lost something and refuse to be broken by it. And always, the story begins the same way. They hurt the human's mate, and ends with a chill, a smile, an understanding that transcends language. Moments later, their champion's head was in his hands. Epilogue. In the twilight of the Orphean system, where the wreckage of forgotten wars drifts in silent orbit, a single transmission beacon still hums, a relic of a battle long past. Every few years activates, broadcasting a simple message in ancient Terran code. Protect what you love. Fear nothing else. It said the beacon was set by Elias himself. No one's ever confirmed it. But every human ship that passes near it slows its engines,